What makes a great finale? I've always said that the most important thing when wrapping up a TV series or a movie franchise is not that it's necessarily the best movie or the best episode, but rather that it does its job. The job of providing a satisfying conclusion to the narrative we've been watching and the character arcs that our heroes have had. Like, Avengers Endgame is not the best Avengers film, in my opinion, of course, but Endgame still does its job of tying things up for the narrative and our characters in a satisfying way. Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2, in my eyes, is the worst Hunger Games movie, but it still does its job of wrapping things up in a way that doesn't ruin everything that came before. Game of Thrones Season 8, actually, never mind. That one is, what not to do. So, the point is, heading into the Stranger Things finale, I didn't need this to be the best episode of the entire show. It just needed to do its job. And then I watched the first hour of this episode, and I was like, oh shit, this actually might be the best episode of the entire show. Let's talk about the ending of Stranger Things. So before the episode even really gets going, they put the Byler rumors to bed. I feel like they knew that some people out there were still thinking Byler was gonna happen, so they're like, let's just tease them extra hard.
Friends? No thanks. Best friends.
Like, Will was already in the friend zone, but Mike just had to double down and let him know. But in all seriousness, I am happy that they gave us this final scene with these two guys to show that despite everything, they're still able to be platonic, best friends, and maintain that bond. Now, going into the finale, I was very concerned about what they were going to do with Max. I was like, are they really just going to have her sitting on the sidelines the entire time? So what they decided to do, bringing her into Eleven's mind, I thought was great, and it made a lot of sense in the story because she is the one who's been in Henry's mind the most and would be the most efficient at navigating it. Now, Steve almost dying in this episode, I can't lie, I was like, there's no way they're killing Steve. Because to me, they wouldn't put Dustin through that again after he already lost Eddie. So I was like, no, someone's gonna save Steve. But I didn't expect it to be Jonathan. I fully expected Dustin to save him. But I like the fact that it ended up being Jonathan because it then allowed them to have this conversation that they've needed to have since the beginning of the season, where they get to sort of resolve the tension between themselves. Now, once the plan gets fully underway, I think this is where the writing is kind of at its best for the whole season, where they do a really nice job of making it seem like every action that our heroes take has a consequence. So you have Eleven, Collie, and Max going into Henry's mind to save the kids, but then, because of that, Eleven gets captured, which allows Henry to see into her mind and realize that he can exploit Hopper, and it creates this really nice escalation of events, this kind of domino effect where everything starts to go to shit through this chain reaction where Hopper is getting manipulated, he then tries to take out Vecna, but he ends up shooting the tank with Elle in it, and so then she's bleeding out, and he pulls her out of the tank, only to realize she's not actually bleeding out, but now Eleven, Max, and Collie have been pulled out of Henry's mind, so all the kids are on their own. Like, the whole sequence was just so tense and so brilliantly written. Now, I love the conversation that we get between Hopper and Elle, but I want to save that for a bit later on in the video when we're discussing Elle's fate, so let's keep it moving here. Now, Derek pulling Holly into that cave and telling Henry to suck his fat one, I'm not even joking, maybe the greatest moment of this entire episode.
Suck my fat one!
Such a perfect payoff, such an iconic line, such iconic line delivery. I love this kid. Now, I love all the stuff where Henry goes into the cave, finally, and mostly because of Jamie Campbell Bower. Like, if this dude does not get Emmys for this, I'm sorry, that would be ridiculous. His performance in a show with a lot of great performances, I think is probably the best one. I'm also happy they showed us what was in that briefcase. And I've heard some people say that, they didn't explain enough about what this is. But to me, I'm like, what else do you need to know? Like, it's obviously a piece of a rock from the abyss that has some weird sort of demonic mind flayer energy in it. Also, I've heard that this is what the spin-off is about, so if you're wondering, who is that scientist? How did he get this rock material from the abyss? Stay tuned, I guess. Now, I was a little bit scared when they were doing Henry's backstory that they were gonna fully humanize him and do a full-on redemption arc and be like, oh, he was just a victim this whole time, but they didn't. And I love that. I love that he was like, no, I chose this. I could have resisted it, but I didn't want to because I'm an evil man. I like being evil. And also, he started spitting some bars where he was like, we are one. Get it? Because they're one as in him and the Mind Flayer, they're together, but also he's number one, the first test subject of Brenner. Now, I said at the beginning of this that after the first hour of this episode, I was thinking this might be the best episode in the whole show. And that's mainly because at about the 1 hour mark, we finally get into the first major negative and the first thing that I really did not like about this finale, and that's the big CGI kaiju monstrosity battle. First of all, I think the monster design looks silly. Second of all, the CGI in the scene looks god-awful. I don't know why, but it completely pulled me out of it. It looked like I was watching video game graphics, and it was also something that I just didn't care about. Like, I'm invested in them fighting Vecna, the character that the show has spent time building up for 2 seasons, and so every time it would cut to the outside where the rest of our team is fighting against this big spider monkey monster, I was like, dude, I don't care about this, and it looks bad. Can we please go back to 11 fighting Vecna? But even when it comes to the more intimate battle of 11 against Vecna, I also think this was kind of a negative on the episode, and that's because it was all a bit anticlimactic. They defeat Vecna rather quickly, which is not great, but even more importantly than that, the way in which they defeat him is very simple. They just simply overpower him. And I've always said that you cannot defeat the big bad of your show in such a simple, straightforward way. It's like, we've been fighting this guy for years. How did we finally defeat him? How did we finally manage to put Vecna to bed? Well, we just overpowered him. That's it. We were fighting, and then we just fought a little bit harder. Like, that's not good enough. You have to come up with some way of defeating him that is a bit more clever. Now, I don't know what that clever way would be, but I know that you need that in order for it to feel truly satisfying. I will say though, the shot in this fight where the camera comes through Will's eyeball, very saucy. I liked it. So after they defeat Vecna, everyone's happy. They're heading back into Hawkins where they get captured by the military, and this of course is where we see Elle make her sacrifice and kill herself. Now, I have a lot of thoughts, but again, we're gonna save this for a bit later on when we're discussing what really happens to Elle here in the end. Now, the show has like a good 35 minutes of epilogue here, which some people are exaggerating on and saying the epilogue is like an hour long. No, it's not. But even the 35 minutes of epilogue we get, I would say are very necessary to really send off all of these characters in a way that feels complete. I loved seeing Dustin's speech at the graduation being this homage to Eddie and what he said he would have done. The final scene with all of our older kids, Steve, Jonathan, Nancy, and Robin, was beautiful. It's an incredibly sad scene as they reminisce on a time where they didn't have to schedule their hangouts and they were just around each other all the time without even trying. And I really love the line where they talked about how their other friends, their new friends, are wonderful, but it's just not the same. And I just think that's something that pretty much everyone can relate to, of being around a new group of people that are all great, but it's hard to replicate past friendships that just have something to them that comes from years and years of being together. Now, I was really happy that we finally got to see Hopper and Joyce at Enzo's. This is something they've been building to for years, so it was nice to see them getting their happy ending. But I was surprised we also didn't get to see Vicky and Robin finally having their date at Enzo's. In fact, we don't see Vicky and Robin together at all in the epilogue, which makes you question, are they even still together? And the Duffer Brothers have said that they left that ambiguous on purpose, but like, why? Like, why not show us Vicky and Robin there in the future? Or even if they did break up, show us that. I just don't really understand the purpose of leaving it ambiguous here. Now, the final scene of all of our kids back in the basement again playing Dungeons & Dragons was perfect. It's how the show opened up, so bookending it the same way was lovely, and especially once they start showing us the future. Lucas and Max together getting their date at the movies, Dustin going off to study but still making some time to hang out with Steve, Will going off to another city and seemingly finding a boyfriend, Mike going on to write stories inspired by his friends. It was all perfect. And then they throw in the twist. All right, so let's finally talk about it. Elle's fate. Now, I'll probably do an entire video on this, so I don't want to waste too much time here, but essentially, the show leaves it ambiguous as to whether or not Elle really died. And I'm just gonna say it, I don't think they should have done that. In my opinion, they should have gone with the route that Elle is alive definitively. And here's why. When you do an ambiguous ending, you basically give the audience 2 options and leave it up to them to decide which of those 2 options it could be. But the problem for me here is one of the options is not a very fitting one. Like the option that 11, in order to break the cycle of abuse, has to just kill herself, in my eyes, is a very cynical, almost nasty plotline, and especially given the talk that she had with Hopper earlier in the episode, where he literally says, "We will solve this problem, but not like this, not with more violence and more trauma." And then we're left to believe that that's kind of what went down here. I just find that to be a very strange option for the show to leave on the table. Now, the other option they have on the table I think is great, and I think it's kind of masterful storytelling the way they get us there. I just wish they had confirmed and made it definitive that Elle is alive instead of leaving it ambiguous, because to me, when you leave an ending ambiguous, both options should be viable, but at least in my opinion, I don't view the option where Elle ends the cycle of torture and abuse by committing suicide as a really good, viable option. Now, to end this video on a more positive note, the final 3 or 4 minutes of this episode, all the kids sitting around the table saying, "I believe," before they go and they put their books back on the shelf while they're all in tears as the theme Kids starts playing, was perfection. And then they made it even more perfect as we see the next generation of kids come down the stairs in this perfect sort of passing of the torch moment as Mike and all of his friends finally leave the basement and shut the door behind them. It's a beautiful ending, but it's also incredibly sad. But the fact that it is incredibly sad is kind of the best indicator that what we had here with the show was truly something special. Also something to note, in the first episode of the show, when Karen calls Mike up the stairs, Mike says,
Mom, we're in the middle of a campaign!
And in the final episode, when Karen calls Mike up the stairs, he now says,
Yeah, we just finished.
Which I thought was a beautiful little touch to put at the end of the show, that their campaign is finally over. Stranger Things is over, and it was pretty incredible. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, click somewhere on the screen to see another. Make sure to leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. But of course, only if you really want to. Bye-bye.